Pastor Neil, I want you to feel free and not feel rushed in this. If we have to extend this, I think these truths here are so needed that it's not something we need to rush. If we got to expound this and your time is available, I'd love to expound on this. And really, I'm a man. Sometimes if you just, put a big old plate in front of me, I may eat it, but I won't enjoy it as much as if I take small bites at a time. You know what I mean? And that's what I feel some of this can be done in small bites. But talking about, if you need these, or you have them.
I think I've got this. You can pitch out what you want to.
If talking about a little bit about last week, you titled it "Not Alone," which I thought was awesome because that's a issue.
Yeah.
You gave 5 accountable questions, which were huge. Can you expound on those questions again? Accountable questions, in other words, what you ask each other, better than just the norm. How are you doing? What do you do for a living? We always go to what you do and not who you are. And I love what you said. You said God is more interested in you being than what you do, what you are. And so many people ask me all the time about their careers. If is this what God wants me to do? Man, I'm trying to find God's will in this. And I said, I get that, but God's more concerned about your character than your career. Because your character, you take to heaven. Your career, it's limited to earth. So tell us a little bit about those accountability and how you came about.
Yeah, I think one of the statements I made last week was men without purpose don't know they're alone. And the other side of that is men with purpose determine when to be alone. And so you choose the time alone. And if you are alone, you're not at a disadvantage. I think a little mantra or voice in my mind was when you don't know what to do, prepare. That's constantly in my mind. When you don't know what to do, prepare. And so if I have I've learned to not be nervous when I'm alone because I'm digging in. And so part of the 5 questions was I was so tired of just having, are you doing anything wrong sexually? Looking at something wrong, thinking things that are wrong, or, tempted to act out on things that are wrong. And that was the only man kind of conversation I had with anyone for years. And finally it's like, man, I'd like something better. And so those
like a broader question.
Yeah, because all those questions makes me a better man. They challenge me to, that last one is, what do you need to decide, do or know? What do you need to decide, do or know? Yeah. And man, that is. So
let's go over one.
Okay.
What are you thinking?
Yeah. What are you thinking? And that has to do with, are you being mentally attacked? One of the things I say, you either think, feel, or do. And so you got to approach guys in the way they process. And what you process is a gift. And we'll talk about that later. But if you're a thinker, you think first, and then you probably feel, and then you do. If you're a feeler, you feel, then you think, and then you do. If you're a doer, you don't do either of the other two. You're always wondering, what were you feeling? Did you care about anybody else's feelings? Right. If you're a doer, this is what you've heard. Didn't you care what anybody else was thinking? Or what were you thinking? And it's like, oh, I just acted. You're probably a doer. And doers get really irritated with thinkers and feelers because
they're ready to get
thinkers can't get the plane landed, and the feelers can't get off the couch. And so anyways, we need each other because we come from different directions. So coming back to that, what are you thinking? You got to know if the person really does think first. And so to get them off on the feeler, what are you feeling is that sometimes a thinker really does need to feel, and a doer definitely needs to learn that.
Well, in that statement alone, I know where I land because I'm a doer.
Yeah.
Because my wife's always asked me, what do you feel like eating? And I never feel like eating something. I see food as just fuel to get me to what I need to do.
Yep. Yeah.
So I just tell her, whatever you want to eat, I just want to eat. What do you feel like eating? And I don't feel food. I just eat. So that's a little example.
Yeah. So on my side of it, if I'm a feeler first, so I know that door needs to hang on more than one hinge, and but I just don't feel like I need to fix it right now.
Right.
And so it doesn't.
What are you reading?
Yeah.
That's a great question. What are you reading? I had a young man recently. We were driving and we had a little time to talk coming back from the ranch, and he came up there to help me, which is a great opportunity for anybody that wants to spend time with me, because I'm at the ranch 3 times a week now. And he was driving with me, and he said, without any promptu to this, hadn't heard your message yet. He goes, Pastor, what have you been reading lately? And I thought, what a great question. I told him. Then he goes, and what book in the Bible you've been reading? Because we talked about some books I've been reading, and then we talked about some books in the Bible I've been reading. I told him I'm going through Galatians right now. He goes, what are you getting out of it? What are some of the highlights? And this young man's questions were so awesome, and I thought, this is a great conversation.
That is.
And I really complimented him. He's in his 20s, and just said, these are great questions you ask. I don't normally get questions like this of young men your age.
Yep.
And so it goes to the things, pornography and stuff like that, and struggles.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he has those things, and we'll get there. But his question was, what was I getting in my soul? And what was my focus? And it was just great questions. And I love that. What are you reading?
So on the reading aspect, because I know I'm going to get asked. So I have a guy that we ask these questions all the time. And so I'm not good at hiding now because he knows me well enough. But if you can't, so the question is, what should I read then? The thing is, if you can't find one good quote as you read, something worth remembering or something worth writing down, something worth remembering or something worth writing down, then you need to find something else to read.
Exactly. I love what you just say. You say things, and that's what I'd say. When people get to know Pastor Neil, he says things casually, and sometimes I don't know if you get how the explosion that happens in people's minds, but you just said, a friend of mine and I were talking, one that I can't hide too easy anymore with. I love that statement because men are masters at hiding. And one of the reasons the return was created was because I know that. And I hid for years. And it goes all the way back to Adam. Adam, what did he do when he messed up? He hid from God. And God went and had to find him. It wasn't like God lost Adam. Adam lost himself.
Yeah.
And God had to say, Adam, where are you? That was for Adam, for him to answer. I know God asks us questions, but already knows the answer. So it's really more for us. That was so powerful. You've developed such a friendship with these gentlemen in your life that you could say, these are men that I can't hide with. They know me in and out. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. Because that's huge in not being alone.
Right.
You also made statements, and we can go over it quickly because I want to get into your thing, but you made statements about not alone. You kind of opened up with scriptures about that and said, and do you remember those?
I don't.
Okay. Well, we got the notes.
Yeah,
if you want them, we can send you these notes, the guys that are online. We have them here written for the guys that are coming here in person, but we can get you these notes. But here's what you said. I will not walk alone.
Yeah.
I will not let my family find God alone. These are huge things these are kind of, guys were asking me, are those mantras or those, I said they're personal principles of Pastor Neil. And they said, man, it's so huge. And here where they are. Number one, I will not walk alone, which you talked about with your friend. I will not let my family find God alone. I will not go to church alone. That's huge. Every pastor watching says amen. Number four, I will not know God alone. And I will not go to heaven alone. Now, as a former primary evangelist that I did years and years in the 80s and 90s, that's huge. I would not go to heaven alone. And I don't know if anything can break a father's heart more than know of his children or his family away from God and thinking they may not be in heaven with me. That's a heartbreaking thought. I don't want my family to not go to heaven. Anybody here? No way, right? So we don't want to go to heaven alone. We want to bring as many people, including our family, to that place. Great stuff here. And the ones we just talked about, what are you thinking? Here are the questions to ask in an accountability relationship. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you reading? What are you saying? What is God saying, actually, to be specific? And what do you need to decide, do or no? And that's huge. And those are all in these notes that we have, and scriptures and all in here. And so today, you wanted to bring kind of an addition, expounding to it, and you're calling it building your wingman. We have a former UFC fighter here that's on staff in the ops department, Rashad Coulter, good friend, young man I mentored. I've been to him at the UFC fights, stood in his corner. I really was there as a spiritual encouragement to him, and I held his shoes and shirt. That was the extent of what I knew about UFC. But just having me there, having his spiritual coach there, that he felt was as important as his cut man, which kept him from bleeding, as his coach that gave him the instructions in the ring. And then he has an encourager in the corner. And I thought that was interesting. These are the three elements that fighters have: the encourager, the coach, and the cut man. All those are super important, he said. And I was a encourager / spiritual, encourager to him. And so I was like, kill him, stuff that pastors don't normally say. But I was there, and his small group is called Cornerman, and I love it. And he talks about all the principles of fighting and what it means to have someone in your corner. You're taking it from a more of an Air Force term, wingman, which one of our friends who's spoken here at Andrizo rallies, Chad Hennings, name of his ministry is called Wingman because he's a fighter pilot before he played for the Dallas football team. But I love it. So tell us about Wingman.
Yeah, the idea is just so if building this relationship, it's put on there, like most relationships, a true accountable brother must be built. And it's some of the statements that have come up with is just basically building the relationship. When I started asking the 5 accountable questions, it started, and men who would accept those questions, they become different men to me. They become like they knew my shadow. They knew where I was in the shadow. And when we started building these relationships, and when I started building, I realized I had to help men create them. So it came from my experiences pastoring and all that. But so one of the examples is when I was pastoring, I took a church of about 240 people. We grew to about 380, and then our first 100 walked out. And so I experienced that, the turmoil of that, experienced that with other people. In that process, the elders or whatever, the leadership of the church really thought they were leaders, but they really didn't. I had to teach them. I remember the day I got really mad at them, and I said, well, one of the areas was, I guess I can say this, it's just going, guys, if I ever hear of you say something outside this room out there, you're immediately released from your leadership. Because if you don't have the balls to tell me what you think in here, you don't have the stamina to stand as leadership out there.
Wow.
And so because a lot of people don't really know what it's like to really be a leader, but I had to say that to them because they had to understand the role of the position. And then I remember the second time I had to ask them, I said, you guys aren't confronting me, because a leader can get enough approval from people that they don't ask questions anymore. It's such a dangerous place to be. And so
you don't want yes men. You
want
men to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And then I was in a mix of challenge, because I had here's a fun little story. It's that we had just lost some relationship with other churches where we found a lot of fellowship with men, and we had lost that. I had built a relation with Ted Haggard at New Life Church, and we decided to go in together, had a men's retreat together, and the very next weekend is when all the news came out on. And I had to stand in front of my church and go, wow, we just lost our second relationship. So accountability shot really high on my radar, and I was like, how am I gonna? How do you raise men that's been fooled twice? And
some of y'all don't know who Ted Haggard was. Major, massive church in Colorado Springs. Incredible effect across the world in prayer, and his thing was he had that conference every year. Right? Missions.
It was great. It was phenomenal.
Phenomenal communicator, phenomenal speaker, almost like a Jimmy Swaggart kind of impact, but had some moral failures that came out publicly and kind of just tanked the whole ministry. Today, Brady Boyd is the pastor of the church. Phenomenal pastor. That's where the shooting was a few years ago. The church where the shooting was in Colorado was the same church. Brady Boyd was the pastor there, where a guy came in and started shooting. And the church has been through a lot, but they got good leadership now.
But when you're trying to lead and your knees keep getting knocked out from under you, I talked about losing my first 100 people, and then we continued to grow. After that, got stabilized, started moving forward. I had a guy with one of my elders walks in, he goes from our church and says, "It's time for you to leave." And I said, I had no idea. And he was one of the prominent guys in the church. And I said, I just don't think that's correct. I don't think you're hearing from God at all. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. And he goes, "No, you're not listening to me." And my elder was standing there, and I took it all. And then this was what was weird during that conversation was he doesn't know how to fight for me. He doesn't. He should be stepping in here. He wasn't supporting me. But that's all I was thinking during the conversation. This guy was coming at me, but I thought, wow, I never raised him up to protect me. And so it's my bad. And that whole situation showed me I did not raise him. And so in some leaderships, like in churches, you have people who represent the people. Leaders represent the people, and some leaders represent the pastor. And so there's always this conflict, and it shouldn't be that way. We should stand like this, and we work. We're not protecting. We're working together. And so, anyways, we lost our next 100 people, and then we shot up. And the thing I learned from Pastor Jimmy Evans was, one person's often taken up 2 seats, and it's very true. And when those people left, we just really started growing.
So this is where you get the word wingman from.
Yeah. Because I had to raise them up. I had to raise them to confront me, had to raise them up to support me, had to raise them up to do these things. And so Like most relationships, a true accountable brother must be built. Healthy means two sides of the road, which means on the sides either you have a controlling person or you have a really wounded person, and that's why this whole idea of finding someone, you find a guy who's in the ditch over here, he's always wounded, always wondering, always in the mire, or he's always controlling on this side, very dominant and always mad or something like that. And to be able to find a person that you can have that relationship with, they can't live in those ditches.
Right.
And you can't keep pulling them out of ditches. You just got to bypass some of those people.
That's good.
And the confrontive is they tell you the hard things. The supportive is just like what I talked about with you have to raise people going, you know what, you need to stand up. You can't be the wounded person either, and you can't be the controlling person either. You have to go, listen, you may not know when to step in when it's supported. I don't want you to overreact, and I don't want you to tell anybody a lie. I just want you to know when it's time to go. If you don't know me that well, then we need to get you to know me that well, because to be supportive in our relationship, I need you to step up.
Pastor Neo is talking about under the point here, like most relationships, true accountability brother must be built. So he's giving you the ingredients of what builds a good accountability brother. Mm-hmm. And that's important because the word accountability, guys, has been watered down, and it's been really kind of become a buzzword in the 90s, I believe, is when it all started happening. And it's just not taken, it's not really defined. Paulie Pinecare, who is my right-hand guy in men's ministry here at Covenant Church. And by the way, keep him in prayer. He's in quarantine right now. His wife came down with COVID, Kim Pinecare. And so he let me know yesterday he's in quarantine. So be praying for her. But Paulie was in 3 accountability team groups, 3, not 1, but 3, and yet was bound with pornography, was totally in bondage to pornography. And when God had to really deliver him, but his accountabilities wasn't really asking him these questions. It wasn't really built on the foundation that Pastor Neo is expounding on. And that's why this is so important, because you want men that will confront you in love. That's the key, in love, tell you the truth, and not just always patting you in the back and telling you good job and you're drowning. You know what I mean? When I'm drowning, I don't need someone saying, splash, kick. I need them to throw me a life jacket, right? So 2 sides of the road, they tell you the hard things. And then number 3, supportive. Go ahead and expound.
Yeah. So supportive, they know your line. And what I mean by that is we all have, okay, there's a line that we're all on. If I say, are you always up here? Do you go like this? How are you? There's a invisible line we all understand, and you go, I'm just kind of this low key guy that just constantly, the motor's always going, or I'm this high energy guy, or I'm this guy goes like that. And if you don't know that about each other, you can't support each other when that happens. Now, inside, I'm like this. I feel this way. So my team, my wingman, here's what I all had to do is go, how do I sing to you? And they go, oh, and they know that I'm talking about the line, because I have a tendency to go up and down. I have these highs and lows, and I go, how do I appear to you? And they go, oh, you're good. You seem like this. And go, wow, inside, I think I'm on top of a roller coaster and I'm hitting down in the pits. And I don't know it. I'm not showing it. And one of my concerns is, I can talk to them about it, but I still, as a leader, I need to have composure. But some guys are constantly like this. And so getting close to someone enough to know their line, know somebody's line, and that way you can coach them when they're in that situation. And you trust each other because you're going, man, you're all over the map on your line.
Yeah.
And so that's important to speak to each other. You know your line. Everybody in here knows their line. And then that's the other there, talk on the level and talk them back to where they're at. Don't try to change. They're not trying to be like you. Help them know their line and help them get back on it.
When I first came on staff, we did a retreat called Walk the Line. At first, that's what I thought you were talking about, walking the straight line, but you're talking about the emotional line, know where people are emotionally. Yeah. That's really good.
And I needed that feedback. Trustworthy, stand up for you when you're not around. And that was really, it's loyalty. But it's, and guys, especially in our relationships with our wives, when we're talking to another man, you need a guy who's knows your wife too. I mean, just going, man, you're out of bounds on this. Just tell you the truth. And then the spirit sensitive, you hear from God and commit to prayer. It's like, I just think often about when Samuel came to David and tells him the story about the lamb. And he says, you are the man.
Nathan,
I'm sorry. It's Nathan. Yeah. And tells him, and it's just this shocking reality. I'm better when guys tell me a sort of little story to get to me. I'm very, respond well to that. And in your prayer with somebody else, sometimes it's not, you already know the truth. It's just, how can you package it in a way? And so I need, you need that spirit sensitive, hear from God. And guys, we most of the time let little things go. Here's what I've learned, and this is really important. So frustration leads to confrontation for the purpose of restoration. So any little nudge that you get a knee-jerk reaction in a relationship kind of thing, if you're building your wingman, you can't let it go, because here's what I've learned. After 2 knee-jerk reactions, I will adapt and never confront. I have to act within the first 2 knee-jerk reactions, or I will adapt and not confront. But any frustration without leads to confrontation for the purpose of restoration. You can't restore a situation without confrontation. And so.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. What you're doing in this wingman conversation, one of the things I understand about wingmen and why they're important, and what I'm hearing from you with these questions to ask, or foundations of accountability. The importance to wingmen, guys, in a battle situation. I don't know, some of you are my age, or a little older, but there was a show when I was a kid called Baba Black Sheep. Mm-hmm. I remember with Conrad, I believe was the actor, Robert Conrad. A guy with the battery. There, you knock it off. Tough guy. He played a true story about these Corsair pilots who fought in World War II, who were unbelievable pilots. They flew the Corsair into battle and had tremendous success. And it was called Baba Black Sheep, and it was like a black sheep of the Air Force, a group of men from all walks of life who just absolutely protected the air. But one of the things that I saw in one of the segments was Robert Conrad, who played the main leader. And I'm trying to remember his name. He had a unique name in the show, but he told a wingman one time, he says, don't ever again. He was reprimanding him for leaving his side it was pulled out in a dogfight in the air with one of the Japanese enemies, and he was pulled off, and he says, don't ever leave my wing, and shoot where I shoot. That was the success that they had. A wingman When the leader, they fly almost like in a duck formation, the arrow. When the leader is coming in on a enemy line of airplanes, his wingman needs to shoot where he shoots, because it's called in battle concentrated firepower. So when he shoots, his wingman shoots, and they stay on each other's wing, as you saw in Top Gun. That's what was importance of, they call him Maverick, is the new one coming out. Maverick was to stay on the wing of his other man, because he had to focus where he's focused. They discovered in dogfighting in the air that if two men fly this way and fighting everywhere, they're not as powerful and as effective as they stay together, because they have concentrated firepower, and they'll take out a guy faster and get on another plane. And so that's the importance of a wingman, is that he's helping you have concentrated firepower at the enemy. Mm-hmm. If he's out doing his own thing and we're out doing our own thing, we're spreading our power and we're not focusing and concentrating it and taking out the target. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why wingmen are so important, is that they help us concentrate on something. They're our side mirrors in a car that catch things that we don't see. Joe and I do a lot of driving together, and I'm always saying to Joe, look to the side. Help when I come to an intersection. Is it clear? Yes. I can look, but he's even closer to the view. Does that make sense? He can help me, because one of my biggest wrecks in life was at a corner, because I thought I looked good enough and I didn't, and I pulled out in front of a semi. So having someone to look for you in life at blind spots is huge. That's a wingman. So you talk about, again, utilizing the processing, think, feel, and do. We covered that earlier. Mm-hmm. Let's go to this end here, and then we're going to let these guys have time to pray for each other. Grow gap traps. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that little statement above there, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. Mm. And these growth traps is how do I develop myself, or what's holding me back from developing myself? And the growth gap traps is, one is the assumption gap. I will assume I will automatically grow. And it's this idea that I'll just keep growing as it comes. And the old Bruce Springsteen said, a time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start being the man you want to be.
Bruce Springfield said that?
Springsteen, yeah.
Wow.
It's a good statement.
Say that again. It's a time
comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start being the man you want to be.
Wow. That's huge. That's deep.
The knowledge gap is I don't know how to grow. And outside my faith, this John Maxwell, the decision to grow has impacted my life more than any other. Mm. And in the timing gap, it's not the right time to begin. And the law of diminishing intent is the longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater the odds you will never actually do it. The mistake gap, I'm afraid of making mistakes. What would you do? This Robert Schuller wrote, what would you attempt to do if you knew you wouldn't fail? Man, that's such a great statement.
Yeah.
5, the perfection gap. I have to find the best way before I start. And, that's not going to happen.
Going back to number 4, there's a book years ago I read, I wish I wrote it. I read called Jesus CEO. Mm. Remember that book?
Mm-hmm.
And she said a statement similar to Robert Schuller's. She said, if you had 10 times more boldness today, what will you do different? Mm. And she asked a question prior to that. What in life would have been different if you had had boldness and confronted it, today? And then she says, if you had 10 times more boldness, what would you do different? Boy, it really makes you think, what would I do different? And then she says, then do it.
Yep.
Because the spirit of boldness comes upon him who is willing to do something with it. I just thought that was a really good statement. I think it goes with Robert Schuler's statement here. You're more likely to act yourself into where was it? I jumped right here. What would you attempt to do if you knew you wouldn't fail? Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep. Okay, the comparison gap, then the expectation gap.
Yep.
Expectation gap. Talk about that one. The comparison gap that's a given.
Yeah, the expectation gap, I thought it would be easier than this. People create their own luck. Here's the formula. Preparation, which is growth plus attitude plus opportunity and action, equal luck is that.
That's good.
You can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. And that's such a good statement.
Yeah, that's great. There's so much good stuff here, and we have the notes, and we can send it to you. Just email men's ministry. Desiree, my admin, can send you this, or even Jay maybe can figure out a way to get it on. But we'll get it to you. You just let us know, and we'll find a way to give it to you. But Pastor Neil, these are great. I would love to take this, if you can, if your time is available, to just even do this more. Get deeper in this, because we didn't even cover all that. You talk about making transition to intentional growth.
Yeah,
that's something we can cover even more, because the transition, intentional growth is a huge topic right there. Intentional growth, because that goes back to what you said here. A lot of people want to change the circumstances. James Allen's quote. People are anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're unwilling to improve themselves. Therefore, they remain bound. Guys, I can't tell you how much conversations I have with men who I say, change isn't change until it's changed. That's an Echo quote. Change isn't change until it's changed. Y'all have heard the old saying about insanity is doing the same things over and over and over and expecting different results. That's been an old quote, and it's true. We can't do the same things over and over and over and expect different results. We're going to get the same results. So if we're not changing and we want to change our circumstances, then we need to change. In order to change, we need to do some things. And that's what these principles are about. Wingman is about getting somebody in your corner to that has these foundations that we talked about today, and to start filling in these gaps, these growth gaps. When people make comments to me over the years, man, you have changed since the last time I was with you. It was the last time you were with me. 10 years ago, I saw you speak at so-and-so, and man, how you speaking now? I go, 10 years ago? Man, I better be different than 10 years ago. If I hadn't changed in 10 years, then I better get out of this game. You know what I mean? Then sure, I better grow. But have y'all ever seen somebody 10 years later, they haven't changed? Still going through the same things, still doing the same things. Matter of fact, it's getting worse. What happened? No growth, no input into their life and growth. And so I like saying that my mentor, Tim Story, used to say, I'm not what I want to be yet. We're all transitioning. We're all growing, but I'm not what I used to be. Thank God. I'm not where I want to be yet, but thank God I'm not what I used to be. I'm growing. And wingmen in my life you've been a wingman in my life. We both raised all girls, and your girl's a little older than mine. And so you were a great resource to me over the years to go to and ask, Pastor Neil, what do I do in this stage? My boys are looking at them now. How do I not kill them? And you're like, James,
buy a shotgun.
Here's how you got to do it. Then they fall in love, and then they want to get married. And I would ask them questions. What are the questions you ask the boys? And he would tell me. And And now you're in the grandfather stage. And so I'm you know, hoping to come to that stage soon. And so I ask you questions about that and you tell me. And so I have that resource with Pastor Neil. What is that person in your life, you know, and get it. There's some young guys in here that I mentor, like Zach Stone. And one of the things I started with them when I mentored them is, can I ask you the hard questions? Can I ask you the tough questions? Will you trust me enough to know that I'm for you, not against you? And that's because it's not always going to be pie in the sky conversations, you know. We need people that are going to be real with us. Amen. And so we want to get the next 10 minutes before power hour is over to let you break out in your groups on Zoom, pray for each other. And let's come back about 3 minutes before the end, Jay, and just close with a blessing. But we're gonna break out from this group here. They're gonna get in their groups, and we're gonna get here in a group. Just talk about things and pray for each other, and then we're gonna come back and bless this the rest of the day. Amen. So guys, I'll see you in a little bit. Get together, talk to each other, talk maybe about some of the points we've talked about. Why it's important to have a wingman. Why it's important for you to know that you're not alone, and that we have some answers for you. All right. See you in a little bit. Where there's unity, you command a blessing. Psalms say, and so we want that blessing. As Pastor G taught this weekend, Lord, unity is so important. We need to be all in this thing. So Lord, bless us, keep us, cause your face to shine upon us.
Yes, God.
Lord, give us, Lord God, your peace and cover us with your precious name, Jesus. In Jesus' name. God bless you guys. Remember, act like a man. Amen. Andrizo.
Amen.